We are live.
Okay.
So I have to admit, I am really impressed that we've got, this will be 10 straight podcasts.
Is that right?
So
Congratulations, double digits.
episode 10 already. We are into double digits. And so I think the podcast is really kind of picking up some momentum. We're hearing some good things and the audience is growing. Our metrics are showing that we're getting more and more views and listens every week. So
Awesome. Congratulations.
Thank you. So
Thank you.
Quite an interesting variety of topics we've had.
Yeah, no, that's the thing that I'm liking about it is that I'm learning something new every week. And so today we're lucky to have our guest LaShawn Schultz, and she's a social work professor at Salt Lake City Community College, and you are also a behavioral therapist.
Mental health therapist.
Mental health therapist.
Yes.
Wow, that sounds like a lot of school.
It's a lot of school. Yeah, lifelong learning. That's
Man.
kind of what it is. Yeah.
Where did you go to school?
I went to a school back east in North Carolina, Duke University, and then I went to Marywood University for my graduate work, and I'm finishing my doctorate at another Catholic institution in Nebraska.
Wow.
Which one's that? I grew up in Nebraska.
Oh, it's in Omaha, the College at St. Mary.
Oh, really?
Mhm.
Yeah, okay.
Nuns on campus. I love Catholic schools.
I know where that is.
So maybe we'll get into it. How did you end up out in Salt Lake City, Utah?
Oh, long story, loaded question. My family is, the short version is my little brother got accepted to BYU, and we came out to Utah because we didn't like living in Pennsylvania. It was too cold and gross in the winter. It was like 10
What part
months
of
of winter.
Pennsylvania did you live in?
Scranton, the
Scranton.
northeastern
Oh, yeah.
section.
Isn't
Yeah.
That's
It's colder and worse
The
than here
Office.
It's
in the
worse
cold
than
winter?
here, the office. Yeah,
The Office, there
Steamtown
you
Mall.
go. There you go.
Yeah, it's like 10 months of winter and then 2 months of everything else. And so at least out here, coming to winter, we still had sunshine. Like you could still see things.
Yeah.
Different kind of winter. So we preferred
Yeah.
that with
Yeah.
this to that.
Yeah. It is definitely cold back east. I lived in Michigan for a while, and it's just miserable.
Brutal.
We'll see if we get a real winter here as we look at the snow.
Knock on wood.
Yeah.
Well, so today, I have to admit, as much as I think I feel comfortable about topics and feel comfortable talking about everything, if I'm totally honest, I'm a little nervous just because this is a tough topic. And so today we're going to talk about race and race issues and just things that have to do with race.
Mm-hmm.
And so I know that this is something that you talk about in your classes.
I do.
And so I'm really curious to talk to you and find out what some of your thoughts are. So, the first thing, it's no joke. When I was thinking about what we're going to talk about today, you can ask Mike. I feel really comfortable talking pretty much all the time. But the thought of this being a specific topic,
Mm-hmm.
it was uncomfortable for me. And so, why do you think race is such a difficult topic to discuss?
Because it puts us in a vulnerable position. Like everybody wants to be able to have a voice at the table, and everybody wants that voice to be validated. And outside of our historical, our story as a society in America, we have a hard time talking about race. And so it makes it difficult because nobody wants to offend, nobody wants to be offended, nobody wants to say the wrong thing, no one wants to be called the wrong thing. We all kind of stumble through it. Mm-hmm. We know that it's there, but we have no idea how to talk about it. We know that it exists. It's kind of like an atom. We know that it exists and that it does something, but we really don't know what it looks like or how to hold it or what it would. We wouldn't know an atom if it walked into the room. That's how we kind of treat race. We don't know what it is until it walks in the room.
Speaking of atoms, I actually had someone spell my name ATOM one
That's
time.
unique.
That's the kind of atom you're talking about.
That's how I'm going to refer to you from now on. So, race it obviously keeps coming up, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just when you think collectively we have it together, figured out as a country or a world or as humanity, it seems like one thing after another, it just keeps rolling. And even this week, it's a hot topic again, even with all that's going on in the world. So how when things like race relations or tensions kind of flare up, how does that affect you and what you do for work and in your profession?
You know what? Professionally, when race comes up, I teach an African American culture class up at the community college. I tell my students, I can teach this class based on current events alone every single semester. We wouldn't need a book. We wouldn't need any readings. There would be something happening every week where race is a relevant issue. I've also taught a Mexican American culture course. Same kind of thing, because immigration is a hot topic. So we're always talking about race in some way. Professionally, I love addressing it because the classroom is a really safe place where people can come and ask questions. They can kind of stretch their thinking. I try and make it safe for everyone to ask a question and for all of us to try and create an answer together. As a mental health therapist, when I work with adolescents who are going through a racial identity process or any other kind of identity process, it's again about having a safe place and a safe space. In my family, in my home, with my friends, it comes up, but it's also part of our conversation. So I live it, I breathe it, it's me. And so in a different setting like this one, where I'm outnumbered 2-to-1, 2 men, 2 white men, and me, race can be a different conversation, but it doesn't have to be. I mean, it's just, let's be real and let's talk about what the realities are and kind of where we all intersect. So it's always an opportunity, I think.
Well, I mean, just, purely based on appearance alone, I mean, you are light-skinned, and so how do you define yourself, or what race? Like, if someone asks you, hey,
what are
you? Like, what do you say?
I say I'm African American.
Yeah.
And because I know how race works and how race is this evolving thing, I say I'm a multiracial black female. Because people look at me and they'll say, but you're not all the way black. Well, yeah, I am.
All the way black.
But that's how we're trying to make sense of it. Like, my family is Irish. I mean, you see I have freckles, and I've got a lot of Irish genes, especially on my mother's side of my family. But in America, I'm a black woman, and I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
But I use the fact that I'm multiracial to help white people when I'm like, this is the white side of me talking to you. So we're just going to talk white people to white people, okay? And we laugh just like that because we know that it's real, but like it's also not real. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, you're still a black female. However, that's my opportunity to use the whiteness that I do have to help reach other white people and have them in this conversation.
Okay, well, so that's something that's always interested me, because I actually have 2 Polynesians or Hawaiian island kids that live at my house. And and Polynesians are very proud to be Polynesian, and I have yet to meet someone who has an ounce of Polynesian blood that doesn't say he's poly.
Yeah.
And so for me, I always wonder, why do you think that is that, like, for example, Tiger Woods is what, 25% black?
If we got percentages, yeah, sure.
I mean, if you're going percentage-wise, he's less black than he is white. So, why do we define people as black or Polynesian or of their minority race over anything else, or
at all?
Not, or why do we do that? What do you think the reason is for that?
Human beings, we like to be able to understand things and categorize them. So I need a name, I need a label. When people say to me, LaShawn, I don't even see you as black. I'm like, well, then what do you see me as? And what would it mean if you did see me as black? Because that's really what's underneath that piece of, I don't see you as black. Imagine if I were black, I don't even see you as a man. What would that say to you? Right?
Yeah.
Kind of sit. You sit back in your seat. Like, well, what did it mean? What do you see me as if I'm not a man? Right?
Where's Jenner?
Another
That's a different
conversation
song.
for another day. Another conversation for another day.
He was my first sports hero.
Was he?
He was.
Yeah.
In fact, I have a picture of me with him. And so that's another reason why this has been such a topic of interest to me, is I didn't realize this as a little kid, but my biggest sports hero, the guy that I idolized the most, was a guy named Tony Dorsett. And he's a black running back for the Dallas Cowboys.
Okay.
And, and I love the Dallas Cowboys. And so I didn't realize this until my grandma came into my room and she says, don't you like any white football players? And I didn't even notice it, but I only had posters of black guys on my wall. And so, why do you think that, it seems more like, older people, older generation, they seem way more aware of race than maybe I'm just naive, but do you think we are progressing at all, or do you think we just hide it better?
Both. Both. I think we are progressing. We've got policy changes that have happened that have attempted to change things for us, where we live, where we work, who we can marry, so far as interracial marriages and things like that. But one of the things I teach as a social worker is that we all live in some kind of a system, and systems love balance. So anything about the American system that the balance gets upset, we find other ways to get back into balance. I talk to my students and I say, Black people, we've been freed in this country 3 different times. And they say, what do you mean? I say, okay, well, let's start off with slavery. And then we had 1776, right? We declare ourselves to be this free nation, but we still hold slaves. And then it's like, okay, now we have 1863 with the Emancipation Proclamation. That's the second time we should have been free. Then we had Jim Crow segregation. Then we had the 1950s and 60s civil rights movement, and now we're free again. So we've had this experience of freedom 3 different times in our country. And so in that sense, we've seen progress. We've also seen our system try and get back into balance. And balance is an imbalance of power. So as much as we do make strides, and we have amazing revolutionary spirit from 1776 all the way through 2013, all the way to last week, with the students protesting in Missouri and other students in other campuses across the nation protesting. America is born of this revolutionary spirit. We just seem to only think that 1776 is the time when we had revolution. But I try and teach my students, we have a history of revolution, the labor movement, the different civil rights movements, the disability movements, the feminism movements, and voters' right movements. We have revolutionary spirit and what it means to be an American. So as much as we make progress, we have to do that in reaction to or in conjunction with keep things as they were, stay comfortable.
So to that point, so what do you, or because I've got to be honest, I don't think of, maybe just because I'm white, I don't think of race relations a lot until it comes up in the media.
Yeah.
And so with what's going on in Missouri right now, and you as an African American, what is it that's, I guess, left or that you're feeling still wants to be the revolution that's still in progress? Like what efforts, I guess, collectively do we want to make?
I think this is the therapist part of me that gets underneath, what's really happening underneath the revolution.
Well, that's why we have you on. for some education and context.
People want to be heard. They want to see leadership that says, I see you and I value you. The students' issues with the president of the university was, you're giving us lip service. And so athletes have leveraged what they had, which was, okay, you're going to utilize us and leverage us to help win games and bring money to the school and publicity and everything else. We're going to leverage the same thing to say, you get right or get out. And so that's when he said, they had that $1 million fine looming on them if they forfeited that game with BYU. And so he said, okay, I'll step down. Money talks in our society. So what do we need? I think people need validation. They just need I validate the fact that you live. I validate the fact that your life matters and your ability to succeed and to reach the American dream matters. And how can I help? What do I have that I can help leverage in your way so that you can reach the same level of success that maybe I've taken for granted?
Yeah, and when I watch the news, you see like, what's this all about? And there's obviously students that are experience racism still. I think I get caught up in a bubble here or in my own personal life where I'm like, racism, like that doesn't exist, because I'm so, and obviously it's still there. We had a guest on that I asked, is cyberbullying still a problem? He's like, are you serious? So I imagine the answer is the same when you say, obviously there's still rampant racism alive and well, and I'm sure it's much more prevalent. Is it more prevalent in places like the South and in Missouri, do you feel, or is it still kind of a systemic thing all over? It's
systemic, and in the South, I'm a Southern girl. I'm from North Carolina. You'll hear that come out every once in a while. But in the South, you at least know where you stand. And my family, we're all from South Carolina, the Southeast, and so we always knew where we stood with other white folk. And then there were white folk that had goodwill and that would sit there and stick their neck out for you and say, I'm going to make sure you're taken care of because I can do that. In the West, everyone's really polite, and then it's like you recognize if you get invited to dinner or if your kids are allowed to date or not date. Like, you see it in really impolite, more subtle, but kind of like
subconscious ways?
Subconscious, but it's even a lot more intimate. Like, folks will go to church and have to experience racism, or like, their kids don't get asked out to homecoming dances, or your little African-American boy, he's super cute until he's 13, and then all of our stereotypes and our stuff start popping in about what it means to be a 13-year-old black man, and then we don't know how to talk about it. We forget that this is still, Ryan or Jacob or whomever it is, and he's still a black kid. And so how do we bring each other closer in as family and as community, instead of freaking out and letting some of these outward signifiers mean so much. That's the thing. Like, what would it mean for you to be a black person, or for you to be a black person who's named Jake, that's grown up with my kid ever since we were 5? Then it turns into, oh, but you're not like those other black people. Well, sure I am, because I'm black. If anything else, I may not behave in the same way that scares you.
Yeah.
But what does me being less black, why does that make you more comfortable?
Yeah.
You know? So it's more of an intimate racism, and that's a little bit harder, because you feel like your friends and your family should be the last people that have those stumbling moments, but they do.
Well, I would be curious to know, because I've talked to some of my buddies that I played football with at BYU, and they have said they've had a different experience in Utah compared to other parts of the country. I mean, is that something that you've felt, that there's a different way that Mormons or white people in Utah treat you compared to the South? I mean, what do you think the difference is?
I think white people are white people across in our country. And I think coming to Utah, whiteness and Mormonness has a different history with blackness than it does in the rest of the country. And so, if anything, it was disappointing to see Mormons act as ignorantly as regular white people, because Mormons have been through the same kinds of oppression and segregation and extermination and exclusion as black people have in this country, and other people of color. I expected them to be more empathetic. And sometimes they're not, sometimes they are. So, but I think white folk are white folk across the way. If they give in to their prejudices, then they give in to their prejudices, and hopefully we can build enough of a relationship to kind of help all of us out of it. But yeah, I'm a military kid, so I've been around a bunch of different people all my life. So people are human, because, you know, across the country, they're just how they are, and relationship is really what matters.
Well, you know, I grew up in the military as well, and for some reason, maybe it was my interest in sports, maybe it was the people that I looked up to. I don't really have a lot of rhythm, but for some reason I only like black music. And
It's good music.
Yeah,
I like black
good
music too.
I mean, I always listen to, you know, Nucleus and New Edition, and
I heard your music when I came in, so it's all right. Yes.
Yeah, I
Mixed in with some really nice top 40, like some Taylor Swift in that direction.
I don't know about
Casey
Taylor
Kasem, your inner Casey
Taylor
Kasem.
Swift, that's way off my chart.
Shake it off, Mitch.
But I definitely feel when I do meet a black person for the first time, you know, they talk about, you know, white guilt and you know, shame or whatever it is. I mean, I definitely feel some sort of subconscious pressure to go out of my way to make sure that person, you know, that the black person knows, hey man, I'm cool with you. And so that's, I don't know if that's an appropriate feeling, but I feel it. I'm just being honest. I feel it. I just want them to feel like, hey, we're cool.
We're cool.
I totally like you. I don't know you yet. Maybe
but I like
don't
you
like
anyway.
you. But maybe I don't like you. And see, that's what my buddy Kalen Hall, who played football at BYU, he said that he feels like a celebrity because he's the only black guy in his whole neighborhood. And so everybody knows he was a football star. Everybody knows him. And so his kids are all football stars. And so he gets that celebrity status because he sticks out and he's so unique. And everybody knows him for all the positive things that he did. And so, and then the same with my, you know, kids of color that live with me. I mean, Polynesians are, I mean, I joke around with them and say, you guys are kind of like the black people of Utah. You know, because there's, I mean, outside of Utah, nobody even knows.
Well,
I mean, when I have a business in the South, and I said, yeah, no, there's a lot of Polynesians that live in Utah, and they're like, Polynesian? Is that a salad dressing?
Yeah.
Like they never even heard of that before.
Yeah.
Right.
And so, why do you think, or what's going on with me when I feel that need to make sure that I go out of my way to make sure that a black person feels
that you're not a threat.
That I'm not judging them necessarily, or that I'm open to being whatever it is. I don't want to seem racist.
Purely based on race
But I mean,
alone, yeah.
just that alone makes me know that I'm racist because I'm noticing that I'm feeling that way. So what is that? What's going on with
That's
that?
identity. That's identity development. Like, everybody grows in their own way about what it means to be white, what it means to be a man, what it means to be a woman. I have a lot of students that'll tell me, you know, I make it a point to go out of my way when I see black folk on the street, like I don't cross the street, you know, or I make sure that I smile or that I say, hey, how are you? And she explained it. Don't cross the street. So they can yeah. You know, they don't hold their purse any tighter. They don't do anything extra. You know, they would say, I'm reacting to you because you're a black person. She says, you know, I just want them to know that not all white people are mean. Yeah. She'll say, I don't want them to know not all white folk are racist, but like, it's really, I want to be seen as a nice person. Yeah. We're performing based on our racial standards and our racial expectations. Black folk do that too. Yeah. And, you know, in some ways it helps and in some ways it doesn't, because there are, you know, black folk who will say, I did everything I was supposed to do to not be threatening, and still these negative things happen, you know? So it's hard, and we're trying. And we're trying to make those connections, and we're trying to figure out, what does this mean for who I am? There's a really cool James Baldwin quote who says, you know, it's the gist of it is, I don't have any time for anybody's guilt. I don't need your guilt. I don't need my guilt. You know, I didn't do it. It's not my fault either, talking about racism in the U.S. He said, but I'm responsible for it because I'm a man and I'm a citizen of this country. And the same way for you. You're a man and you're a citizen of this country. Guilt is not a luxury that any of us can afford if we really want to see change happen. So feel your guilt and be good to people anyway. I'm gonna feel my guilt or my fear and be good to people anyway. So the superstar of talking about guilt and shame is Brene Brown. If you've heard of her work about vulnerability, it's good stuff. But she talks about guilt being when you say to yourself, I did something bad, and shame being I am bad. So when I feel, or if you're feeling like I need to act this way so that people don't think I'm a bad white person, that's shame. But when you say, you know what, I think people are cool, and I know that I'm white, and I know that they might have assumptions about me, but I want to make sure that I bridge this gap of feeling guilty about being white and just being a cool person. Guilt is what motivates us to change. Because we make a mistake, we recognize that something isn't right, and we're trying to correct it. So guilt is what motivates us. Shame is what keeps us from being like, oh my gosh, I got to fix it. You can't fix it. You know, we got 400 years of history behind us.
Well,
yeah.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I mean, I'd like to kind of talk some more about like the current event type things that are going on, because that's what's really interesting to me. Because if I'm being honest, and being a white male, I really don't ever think about race until, like I said, it comes up in the media or whatnot. And at that point, I feel like, you know, like other white people kind of, that's when it's like, okay, well, what's going on here? And that's when it gets kind of brought to the attention of why with the Michael Brown and with the, you know,
Eric Garner, Trayvon Martin, Rashida McBride.
The list goes on. Like, and I get that, and I totally feel for that. Yeah. And then you see the other side of things where, you know, you have the Black Lives Matter campaign going on, and but then you hear, I guess, hate stuff on the other side of things that makes you kind of. I think there's a better way. Do you feel that way as far as like, what's the best way to voice the frustrations without, I guess, turning people off or even against the cause?
Right,
do you understand what I'm saying?
I understand what you're saying. People have a reaction to Black Lives Matter, and they have a reaction towards, is this anti-cop, is this anti-white people? And there are going to be elements of that, I think, in any movement. I mean, you look at what we're dealing with, the Syrian refugee crisis now, and how you've got people that are trying to escape, but we're scared about religious differences, you know? So the question becomes, how do you validate the pain that's underneath the movement without condoning or saying that you agree with any of the violence that comes along with it? What's going to be interesting in watching the Black Lives Matter movement is how it grew from the Black Panthers movement, which is what grew from the Civil Rights movement, because they said nonviolence isn't working. Black Panthers get a really bad rap. Were there negative things in there? Of course there are. There are going to be negative things in any movement. But the Black Panthers said nonviolence has gotten 2 of our greatest leaders killed. So how do we defend ourselves? The Black Panthers were founded by lawyers, students that were in law school. The guy that did his dissertation, Huey Newton, the founder, did his dissertation about the FBI surveillance of his life as a Black Panther. He was eventually gunned down. And then the Black Lives Matter movement is similar to the Black Panthers because it was about police brutality in the Black community. And we've just gotten to this place where the system has gone back to being balanced and being comfortable, and things are bubbling up to the surface now. People are saying it was wrong then, it's wrong now, and there's a Native Lives Matter Black Lives Matter. We're trying to say that we don't like state-sanctioned violence against communities of people anywhere. And the Black Lives Matter movement has picked up stories of white kids that have been gunned down unarmed by police. And you don't hear about that either. It's really trying to bring people together to say, this is not about the good cops, but we need the good cops to come in and say these bad cops have to go. And this is the part of the integrity of the profession. But it's scary because there's that blue line and there's that support that cops have too.
Why do you think people of different races look at the exact same situation and their interpretation's totally different?
Because they're totally different people?
And like, for example, like when you see, somebody, like a white person might see a black guy approaching a police car and the police officer telling him to back up or whatever, and he keeps coming. A white guy is going to see that, or not every white guy, but some white people are going to be like, well, why doesn't he just stop? Why doesn't he just do this? Or and then I see the reactions of some black people, and not all black people's reactions are the same. Not all white people's reactions are the same, because I do understand that there's a difference. Your reality is different than my reality. The way you've been treated, the way your history is different than my history, and so it is different. And so, what's something that you teach that you like your students to learn when it comes to being able to perceive things? I mean, is it possible to perceive things neutrally, or are you always going to have everything is going to be perceived based on your racial circumstances?
And the subtext there, yeah.
Right. So here's the thing. As a white man, both y'all as white men, and all of us being Americans, my history is your history. My ancestors we began and we created this American culture just as much as y'all's did. And I think until we see our histories as combined, that's when we're going to have issues. Can you see anything neutrally? Maybe, but we all feel things when we see that. I mean, I've been looking at the Twin Towers behind you since we've been talking. I feel something when I see that. There's pain, there's memory, and we share that, I'm guessing, as Americans, right? So there has to be a point where we recognize that all of our histories are intertwined, and so are our presents, you know? And so if we can see that, then we can get to what's the emotion underneath this, and how do I validate the fact that you feel pain, I feel pain, I don't want to feel pain. How do we get to a place where we feel comfortable with each other?
Yeah, I totally get that. And I mean, with you see... Like, for example, with what's going on in Missouri, of course, I feel like awful about slavery. Had nothing to do with it. But I recognize that how terrible of a thing that was. And I can see how that affects the sociology, I guess, going forward. And I don't know what it's like to grow up as an African American in the South and experience that racism. And the only thing where it doesn't connect with me is then when you see things like recently where they're doing, the white protesters are protesting with the black protesters, and they say things like, well, we want this to be can't remember a heel zone or something like that. And they don't want the white people that were there. That's to me where it's like, well, let's bridge that gap. You know what I mean? Like, you obviously have, fellow Americans who care so much that they want to be involved in that, and they're supporting you in the way you're feeling. So I just feel like it sometimes is like a dog chasing its tail,
It can be. So the way that we have to be able to acknowledge and respect our differences in the service of creating unity and creating safe space. Male-female differences. If y'all will walk with me for a second. If I'm in a rape survivors group, and you're all like, I totally hate it, rape is terrible, I'm mad that it happened to you, I've never raped anybody, and I want to be supportive, how can I come and be in this with you? Can you understand that women are going to want their own space to heal? They need to be around other women who have been through it. And a man, just because you're a man, it has nothing to do with who you are, but just because of what you represent, you being in that space, somebody might get a man's here. Do you know what I mean? So that's as close of a comparison that I can kind of give you to kind of say, not that it's exclusive, but there's something about inter-group healing that some spaces I can't go into. Like, I'm a heterosexual female. If my gay friends need a space to heal and I really want to be there because I'm trying to help out, I got to realize I'm a heterosexual. It's a difference that I have. And so I can't, that's the part of having privilege, right? It's like, I just want to be there. I want to help out. Let me be in there with you. I feel entitled because I know that I'm not one of those bad ones, right? I just want to be in that space to help and to heal. What I can do is go to other heterosexuals and say, okay, let's talk about how we get in the way of them being able to have rights or them being able to have access. Just like with you as men, I wouldn't want you to be in a rape survivors group, but how can you go talk to other men so that more rapes are not happening? As a black person, if black folk need to be together, how do white folk go and get out and heal with each other and say, how do we make sure that folks who don't think like us, how do we get them somewhere closer to being on board with us? Like that's the responsibility that we have with any of our
that's a good way to
privileges.
explain it. You should be on the news because you just explained it like at least a lot more way to identify with that than most of the other explanations or defense, that I hear.
Because I got to go with what matters to you.
Yeah.
I got to go with what you live every day. You don't live a white male. You don't live white race every day. It's just something that you don't take for granted. But in here, male, female, you can get that.
Is that what you are referring to, or not necessarily you, but when people say like white privilege, is that what you mean? Is that we don't, as white males, don't necessarily have to deal with the impact of race and how it affects our life? Is that what?
For sure. Yeah, but that's just privilege in general. As able-bodied people, from what I can tell, I don't have to worry about parking spaces out front. I can park wherever I want. You know what I mean? And that's what I try and do with my students in my classes. Figure out where you have privilege and just own it. It is what it is. You woke up and you just have it.
And so I think that those are one of those buzzwords or one of those like news words where they grab onto it and they're like, oh, they say you have white privilege.
They start clobbering you with it.
Yeah, where it's, just doing a better job of understanding each other and having a dialogue and kind of just, I guess, sympathizing with the differences,
Leveraging.
Yeah.
I like to call it leveraging because you're going to have white privilege whether you are white or not, and I'm never going to have it, But if you'll leverage it and help me get into a space where I can't because maybe race is working against me or gender is working against me because y'all are male, leverage what you've got because you're going to have it whether you use it or not. So just leverage it to help somebody else get access because you don't lose it.
Yeah. No, I think it is interesting how, it isn't as easy to navigate as you'd like it to be, and it is complicated. I mean, for example, to me, it's always, if I'm just going to be totally blunt about racism, if there's a bunch of white guys together and all of a sudden, we're going to play football or we're going to play basketball and a black dude shows up, we're like, oh man, I want to get the black dude on my team because he's probably better. Or, I mean, I was at the national track championship with my dad, who was the track coach at BYU, and there was a BYU, blonde hair, blue-eyed white girl in the 100-meter finals, and I was just sitting close to a big group of black people, and, they were just totally out about saying, wow, look at how fast that white girl is, and so that was the first time I'd actually went, wow, black people acknowledge that they think they're faster than us too, And so, I mean, what is that? Why do we?
Because they will notice natural differences. Because Adam's point, my son, when he was 5 years old, the first time I had any idea that he noticed any sort of difference, we were watching football, and same thing. He goes, "Why are all the brown guys faster?" And I'm like, they are,
just TV HD. It's just the HD vision. That's all it is.
I'm like, and I've never said anything about it, but he just, are those cultural things? Like, are those things just what keeps, I guess, rooted and a new generation grows.
Racism?
A new
is your
generation.
5-year-old racist?
Is that racism for us to even be talking about the fact that white people know we're open with each other about the fact that we think there's a better chance that a black guy is going to be fast, and black people, when I've been around them where they were in a majority, they didn't care that I knew that all of them thought it was crazy that the white girl was
so fast.
Yeah. So what? How come it isn't something that just as a culture we can just talk about it in mixed company?
Right, mixed company. That's a big thing, right? I think. So let's talk about the white girl that can run real fast. We all have to play to in some ways, the exception to the rule. So white blonde girl, she's got some status anywhere else except for maybe being fast, right?
Yeah.
People think that I'm fast because I'm black. I can't run to save my life. Like if we're in a zombie movie, if the zombies come, just let me go. Just let. I can't run. I can't get out. Y'all save me later. But she's worked extra hard to gain the respect of being a fast runner.
Yeah.
Black folk who do the same thing.
Yeah.
We might have a gift, or we might be exceptional in some areas, but there's going to be some other area where we have to prove ourselves. That white girl went through the same process that black folk go through, just hers was in sports, and ours might be in everyday life. Sports might be easy for us. That's an easy way out. It it plays to our strengths, so why not? We talk about that all the time. In business, play to your strengths. In sports, make money. Do what's going to help you produce. So it's the same kind of thing. There's nothing wrong with talking about it. Or when your 5-year-old brings it up, we just suck at normalizing difference.
Yeah.
We talk, shh, don't say that. Don't say that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So
Right.
what should he? What I mean, if
do you even
what would be
address
something
it,
he
or?
would say to his kids?
Yeah, they're pretty fast, huh?
Yeah.
Just like that.
He knows. Like, yeah.
Right.
No.
You just
He knows.
normalize it.
And he has, his best friend, his first friend was black, and he doesn't even literally notice it's no different to him.
They don't. We don't. They notice the difference, but they don't attach any negative meaning to it.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the difficult part. And there was
So
a
racism
study.
is when you notice a difference and you attach a
Negative meaning,
Okay. All
or
right.
an overly positive meaning to it. We call those microaggressions. It's like, you can't win for losing. I can't be nice. I can't be racist. What can I do?
Yeah.
It's so hard.
Yeah.
But it's just learning. It's learning about how do I validate your existence. So with 5-year-olds, they did a study in 2014. It was a small study, but they recognized that kids will see differences as early as 5. They'll recognize that we all feel pain as early as 5, but by 10, they start associating an inability to feel pain with more people of color than with white people. And by 13, that those differences and those prejudices are set. So the best time to actually intervene and talk about normalizing difference in race is between 5 and 9, which is the time where kids don't even see it. They don't even recognize anything's happening, but they do.
Yeah.
They do. And as long as we can normalize it, being a therapist, I have had to look at gender and womanhood a lot with some of my clients who either are married or have kids or don't have kids. But I remember when I had to work with some couples that were struggling to get pregnant, my daughter was 4 at the time and talked about how she was going to be a mommy. And I normally would not have thought twice about it. I said, yeah, you're going to be a mommy. But because of my experiences as a therapist, I had to say to my daughter, you know what, sweetheart, your body might not work for you to be able to have a baby inside your body. So you might not be able to be a mommy in that way, but there are other ways to be a mommy, or maybe you won't be a mommy, but you can still love people. And she was 4, and I'm like, why am I saying that? Because I don't want my kiddo to be, trying to get pregnant, and she can't, and then it's all of a sudden her dreams, her hopes, her identity, everything is shattered because she can't live up to some sort of ideal. So I think as long as we're normalizing and trying to give our kids as much of a normal differences happen, it's just part of conversation, we give them some strengths to keep them from waiting until they're in their 40s to have this conversation.
Well, I mean, I'm curious as to how you feel having Barack Obama be president. Do you think that has made blacks in America feel any differently, or do you think? What do you?
It's risen more
what
like
effect, what effect do you
sub-racism.
feel like having a black president has actually had on the black community or on racism, or do you feel like it's had an effect?
It's interesting, and I'd have to probably sit with that a little bit because the Barack effect is different. It's had an impact. But in the 80s, we had Jesse Jackson that ran for president. In the early 2000s, we had Alan Keyes, a black Republican, running for president. We've had Colin Powell.
We got like the
Ben
top
Carson,
Republican,
Ben Carson.
and we've got, and then our last president for the last 2 terms has been black. And, it doesn't, and so that's the thing that's real interesting to me is why is it that you think, or do you think that blacks associate more with a Democrat or a black Republican?
You know what? Colin Powell is a black Republican, and black folk, I mean, I don't hear negative things about Colin Powell because he does speak to his blackness and he owns it in a way that some of black Republican candidates have not done so. Like, they want us to be colorblind and not see differences. And so It depends on the black person you're speaking to. There are some really cool black Republicans that I can sit down. I'll disagree. I probably wouldn't vote for them, but I'll talk with them about things.
Yeah.
And I think if we're able to actually have a conversation about some stuff, there's a Tea Party black Republican, I'm forgetting his name, but the documentary he did is called Runaway Slave. It's a good documentary. Oh, and I mean language, right? But it's a good documentary, and he interviews other black Republicans, Frederick Douglass Republicans, and it's a black Republican movement. And it's good people, and it's conversation. But different kinds of people, different types of black identity development are going to influence the kind of black people that they vote for or affiliate with or feel more of a connection to.
How are we doing on time?
We have a couple more minutes.
So one thing that I'm always curious is from these podcasts is what benefit can people take away? You know, like what can we, obviously, you know, the racism thing keeps popping up, and I feel like as generation to generation turns over, I do feel like we are making progress, you know, just in the things I saw growing up, and then knowing that my kids, until they get older and start becoming more aware of it, it does feel like racism is on the decline. But what can we, like people who listen to this podcast, what can we do to kind of just improve, I guess, race relations in general, or what can kind of be the takeaway? We
got to keep talking.
Yeah.
We got to find small times like this to talk about what we really have in common, our kids and our schools and our communities and access to opportunities. Like, will you stick your neck out for me? How can you help? How can I help? How do we leverage the access that we do have to help make sure that everybody's kid has an opportunity? That's one of we have to keep talking. And when we get scared to talk about race because we think we're going to offend one another, then come out with that. I might offend you, and I'm really not trying to, but I really want to understand this, this, and this, and I couldn't find it on Google. Like, go Google something, too, before you come out with a question. Have you Googled it? Because if I have to teach you and you could do an internet search, like, it's a balance. It's a balance of deepening and growing relationships, so we have to keep talking.
Well, like, you know, the opportunities you talk about, I mean, I've met black people that are totally against affirmative action. I've met black people that are totally for it. Why do you think there's a difference among black people in their opinion on giving black people more opportunity?
Yeah, the people that benefited the most from affirmative action were actually white women, just because this is about employment access. Yeah, and demographically, statistically, white women have benefited the most.
What's your opinion of it?
I think that in its inception, it was a really good remedy. There are some really good books. I mean, when you look at affirmative action and how it was for white people religiously, like, white ethnic Europeans got more access to different policies and programs coming to the U.S., so it's not like affirmative action is a foreign concept to us. It's just that when anybody that wasn't white was getting it, we all kind of freak out about it. That's why we have this scarcity mentality. There's not enough to go around. So you'll have different people with different opinions about affirmative action because we're trying to protect this fear that there's not enough to go around. And there is. You know, if we do believe that we live in the greatest country on this God-given earth, then there's got to be enough to go around, because I don't think God is a God of scarcity. So we have to get underneath the stuff and say, what's the emotion? Is there fear or is there love? And is there enough to go around for you, for me, and for our kids? Cool. If there is, how do we help make that happen? And maybe I can't impact the whole world out there, but if I can help impact our community positively, then we've done some good work.
Yeah. So I don't know if you know this, but one of the things that we say that Riven stands for is respect, integrity, victory, effort, and never give up. So
I need a shirt and a hat now. That's awesome.
I mean,
a hoodie will get you a shirt and a hat.
I feel like
the hustle, humble.
You know,
there you go.
That's
that
kind
one.
of what we try to have our brand and our company embody, and so that's why we like to do this podcast, and that's why we like having these conversations and telling stories. But I just feel like there is a huge lack of respect a lot of times both ways, and that a healthy dose of that and empathy and understanding towards one another. I mean, at the end of the day, we're all human beings.
Absolutely.
And we're all equals.
Absolutely.
And I think that if we just focus on that one fact alone, that really makes the biggest difference, I feel like.
I agree with you. And I think when we learn to sit with each other when we're angry, I mean, I'm not angry at you. I'm angry at something that has happened. You're my friend to me if you can sit with me and I'm angry and you're still there when I'm done being angry. Because after the anger is the pain, the hurt, the sadness, and the part that we have to say, I got you, the comforting that we need. But if we get scared because folks are angry and we feel like it's not respectful, we really do lose an opportunity for connection and for growth. So if you can sit with me during my anger, it's cool. Because I watch YouTube videos of white dudes that cuss out cops. And I'm like, I know I couldn't do that because I get shot. You know?
Yeah.
But like
Yeah.
we watch them, I'm like, man, look at that guy, he's standing up for his rights. And you know, okay, that works for some, but not for, I don't answer questions. Man, if I told a cop I don't answer questions, I'd be like, look, Adam, can you get some bail money? Because I got locked up because I didn't answer the right question. Can you come get me? I know it's only been 2 hours. So we have to sit through the anger so we can get to the comfort. And then from the comfort into the laughter and the fact that, you know what? We're going to do it again because race is going to be in the news again. And I got to know who are my people, who can I call and be like, man, this is crazy. But I'm glad that we have what we have and that our kids get along. If we could just clone ourselves into the rest of the world, man, what a good place it would be.
Well, that's awesome. I mean, if you could, like, when you're speaking to your students, I mean, to summarize, what would be the one thing that you tell the students, regardless of race, is the easy, or is something that you want to impart to them as how they can most effectively navigate racial differences?
I tell my students when you come into class, I compare it to a hair tie. I say, I'm going to stretch you. When you leave class, you have a choice. You can go back to your original place, or you can try and do a little bit of something different. Your sphere of influence is the biggest thing that matters to you. Try and influence and impact one person because you've been influenced and impacted. And whatever it is that you take it away and go do something good with it.
Yeah, that's great advice. And I think, you know, I don't know our demographics of who listens to this, but I assume
It's all white people.
Yeah.
we have no idea. But
I know one black dude that did because he told me he liked it.
yeah, but I think we have a lot of.
I actually don't even know.
We do have a lot of parents, you know, and I think
Yeah.
that's a big opportunity, you know, for me is to teach that love and respect and empathy to my children. And I know that's one thing that I can control and that I can teach, you know, because if I'm being honest, I feel like if everybody did that and just taught to respect and love
For
one
sure.
another, as we grow up, it'll, you know, as the world progresses, just get better and better.
That's the thing. And both of you have said that a couple times, if I'm being honest. Think about how many people don't say that. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? If we lead with, if I'm being honest, that tells me you're about to be vulnerable and say something that's probably a place for connection for us. If all of us do that and say, if I'm being honest, you know, I used to think negatively, but now I've changed. And we teach our kids how we've changed and why change is important. If I'm being honest, I want you to have a better relationship than I did. If I'm being honest, I don't want you to be scared. If I'm being honest, I'm going to live my life so that we have interactions, so that difference is normal to you and talking is normal to you. And you can come to me with any question you have.
Yep.
And if I have the answer or not, doesn't matter. I love you and we're going to figure it out together. Because if I'm being honest, that's what we want in our families, right?
Yeah. Well, LaShawn, I really appreciate you coming in.
Thanks for having me.
Always,
Yeah.
I mean,
You're
I
awesome.
love
That was an awesome conversation. I don't know. It was way more comfortable than I thought too. So you did a great job.
Thanks for never having
you're
met y'all.
Obviously an expert at what you do, and it's good to talk about things that I think people can get uncomfortable with, and hopefully people listening felt the same way. So
Yeah.
Thanks for
Thank
doing it,
you.
man. I appreciate
Thank
it.
you. Yeah.
Appreciate it a
Okay.
lot.
Awesome. Well,
You're
thanks for
awesome.
coming. Appreciate it.
Thanks
that's
for having me.
episode
Yes.
10.
Double
We'll
digits.
see you next week.
There you go.
Yeah.
All right.
Thanks, LaShawn.
Yeah, thank y'all.
That was really good.
Yes.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
You too.
Hope we didn't do anything too dumb.